Hello, hello. I'm Sasha of Sasha Makes Cards, and I am so excited to be sharing my first video here on the Whimsy Stamps YouTube channel as a member of the Whimsy Stamps Video Design Team. So for my first card, I thought what better project to first share than a hello themed card. So today's card is going to feature the hello word and shadow die set and the very cute Sending Sunshine clear stamp set. To start off my card, I first start by stamping the image I want to use. So for this one, I'm going to be using the bottom image of the bunny kind of saying hello through the flowers. So I grab my Whimsy Stamps Stamp Intense Black ink. It's one of my favorite inks when it comes to coloring with alcohol markers. And I typically stamp 2 to 3 times to make sure I get a dark, crisp, clear image. I stamp my image onto a 100-pound hammer mill cardstock and then fussy cut it out to start coloring. I use spring assisted scissors to fussy cut and it makes life so much easier. I'm going to be using a Hoo alcohol markers to color my images today, and I've created this little chart that you saw up on screen of the color combos I'm going to use. So if you like the colors I'm using and wish to use something similar or figure out what they are in your own chosen alcohol marker, then feel free to pause the video, take a screenshot, and reference the colors. Today I've chosen to go with a warm, spring welcoming color scheme, so I'm going to be coloring the bunny brown and then the flowers green, yellow, and orange. I first start by coloring the bunny because I always like to color the thing I'm most worried about messing up first, just in case I do, I can restart. But I first start by coloring the bunny using the darkest color E430 because I always like to color from dark to light when using alcohol markers. So I started with E430 and added a little bit of this color anywhere, to me, where it made sense in the darkest parts of the bunny. Maybe it doesn't make sense overall, but to me it makes sense in that's all that matters. I then used E400 to go over the first color and help blend it out before going to E380 to color over all the bunny and blend out the colors. Whenever I'm working with a larger image, I tend to color in sections. So as you saw, I colored the bottom half of the section, the bunny's body first, before going on to the head and the ears. Once I'm done going over the entire thing once, I tend to also go over, again, going from dark to light to add more color and contrast to the image. Whenever I'm coloring, especially a certain section like the ear, I like to flick my marker up to help blend the colors together. It just helps to create a more natural looking blend between the darkest color to the lightest color. As for the flowers, I color them in a very similar way to the bunny, going from darkest color to my lightest color. For yellow, I go from Y2 to Y1 to Y3. For green, I go from G270 to G240 to G220. And for orange, I go from YR180 to Y10 to YR4. For the flowers, I'm also using that same flicking motion that I mentioned earlier to help create a smoother blend between the darkest color to the lightest color. Now this step is completely optional, but lately I've been really enjoying adding colored pencil over top of the images I color with alcohol markers. So here I'm using my Prismacolor colored pencils to add some texture and more color to the bunny image that I colored. After I was all done coloring the bunny, I decided I wanted to stamp some more of the flowers from the stamp set and color them to put in the background to kind of act like a flower field. I stamped them the same way as I did before using the Whimsy Stamps Stamp Intense Black ink, stamped it onto a 100-pound hammer mill cardstock before I started coloring them. I used the same colors I used for the flowers that are a part of the bunny image, and I colored them in a similar way as to how I colored those, and then I fussy cut them out. Off camera, only because I forgot to press the record button, I die cut the hello and the shadow die from scrap pieces of white cardstock. I then die cut the shadow die again, but this time from a scrap piece of black cardstock to act as a shadow to the shadow, which you will see me create later on. As for what I am doing here, I am using mustard seed distress oxide to create a subtle ink blend fade of yellow onto the letters of the word hello. To glue all of the letters down, I'm using liquid adhesive. Here I'm using Barely Art glue, and carefully gluing down each letter to the white shadow cutout. Once all of the letters are glued down, I then glue the white shadow down to the black shadow, offsetting it just a little bit to add a little bit of a black border around some of the edges of the shadow, ultimately creating a shadow on the shadow. To create the background itself, I start by ink blending some seafoam ink from Simon Says Stamp onto an A2 card panel at the top, creating a subtle fade of blue to act as the sky. Once I'm happy with the ink blending, I then use the same green markers I used to color the flowers earlier and start flicking up on the card panel, flicking up from the bottom, going towards the blue sky to create blades of grass. This part is definitely one of my favorite parts, as you really don't have to worry too much about how the grass turns out, and you can really just have some fun with it. Now that our simple little nature scene is all ready, I decided I wanted to splatter it with some white paint. So here I am using some bleed-proof white paint, putting a little bit onto the bottom of this glass jar here, spraying it with water, mixing it, and then splattering it with a fan brush onto the background. Once the splatter is all dry, I can then start to put all the elements together and to make the actual card. So I first start by using the same liquid adhesive I used earlier, my Barely Art glue, to glue the card panel onto an A2 size card base. I also glued the bunny to the hello sentiment to make it easier to attach the whole piece. As for the bunny and the hello sentiment, I decided to pop them up using some foam tape. So I cover the back in foam tape, I peel it off, I put a little bit of liquid adhesive on the foam tape to allow for a little bit of float time, and then adhere it to the background. Once the bunny and the sentiment are placed on the card front, I also glued down a smaller sentiment that I stamped and trimmed off camera onto the bottom of the hello, so it will say hello sunshine. To finish off the card, I glued down the 3 flowers I colored and cut out earlier to make it look like a field of flowers. And that is the completed card project. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to share more projects with you, and be sure to check out the description box below for a list of the products used to make this card and where to follow me on social media and Whimsy Stamps. Thank you, and see you next time.